students, welcome to the lecture of the introduction to the central nervous system and the parts of the brain. So central nervous system, it is the chief controlling and coordinating system of our body. It is responsible for the judgment, intelligence and memory. It is the most complex system of our body. It regulates all the bodily activities by sensory and motor response. It adjusts the body to the surrounding and regulates all the bodily activities by involuntary and voluntary control. The sensory part of the nervous system collects information from the surroundings and helps in gaining the knowledge and experience, whereas the motor part is responsible for the response of the body. When we see the average weight of the brain, it is about 1500 grams. It measures about 1200 to 1300 grams in female, whereas it measures about 1400 to 1500 grams in male. Since the brain it floats in the cerebrospinal fluid, it weighs only 50 grams in the cerebrospinal fluid. So let us see the division of the nervous system. The nervous system, it is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system, it again shows the parts, that is the brain and the spinal cord. The central nervous system, it is responsible for integrating, coordinating the sensory information and ordering appropriate motor actions. The CNS is the seat of the learning, memory, intelligence and the emotions. Whereas the peripheral nervous system, this provides the afferent impulses to the central nervous system and carries efferent impulses to the muscle, gland and the vessels. The somatic nervous system and autonomic system, these are the divisions of the peripheral nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system, it is again divided into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Let us see the cellular architecture of the nervous system. Basically it is consist of the tissue called as the nervous tissue, and this nervous tissue, it is made up of the nerve cells or the neurons, and the neuroglial cells, these are the supporting cells forming the support to the nervous tissue. Each of the neuron, it is made up of the two things, that is the cell body and the cell processes. The cell body collectively the cell body, it collectively forms the gray matter and the nuclei in the CNS, whereas the cell processor, it consists of the dendrites and the axons. So these are the cell processes, these are the dendrites. These dendrites, these are many, short, richly branched and often varicose in structure, whereas the axon, it is a single elongated process. Collectively the axons forms the tract in the tracts, that is the white matter in the central nervous system, whereas they forms nerves in the peripheral nervous system. Functionally, each neuron is specialized for sensitivity and conductivity. The impulses can flow in them with a great rapidity. In some cases, they are about 125 meters per second. A neuron shows dynamic polarity in its processes. The impulses flow towards the cell body in the dendrites and flow away from the cell body in the axons. Coming to the supporting cells, these are called as the neuroglial cells, that consist of these astrocytes, then the oligodendrocytes, microglia and the ependymal cells. The astrocytes, these are the star-shaped cells and they are concerned with the nutrition of the nervous tissue. They forms the blood-brain barrier and it consists of the two types of the astrocytes, that is the protoplasmic and the fibrous astrocytes. Oligodendrocytes, these are the counterpart of the Schwann cells. These oligodendrocytes myelinates the tract, whereas the Schwann cells that myelinates the peripheral nerves. Then microglia, these behave like the macrophages in the central nervous system and they develop from the mesoderm. The ependymal cells, these are the columnar cells lining the cavities of the CNS. So the synapse, the neurons are connected to one another by their processes forming the long chain along which the impulses are conducted. The site of the contact in between the nerve cells is known as the synapse. So this is the figure showing the synapse in between the nerve cells. The one cell may establish such contact through its dendrites with as many as 1000 axonal terminals. However, it may be remembered that each neuron is an independent unit and contact between neuron is by contiguity and not by the continuity. The impulse is transmitted across a synapse by means of this neurotransmitter. Coming to the next slide, that is the parts of the brain. The brain is that part of CNS which lies within the cranial cavity, and it consists of the following parts, that is the cerebrum, the diencephalon, the midbrain, the pons, the medulla oblongata, and the cerebellum. The cerebrum, actually it is also called as the telencephalon, that consists of the two cerebral hemispheres, and this diencephalon, this is the diencephalic portion. The cerebrum, that is the two telencephalic cerebral hemisphere, and the diencephalon, they collectively forms the forebrain, that is also called as the prosencephalon. The midbrain, it is also called as the mesencephalon, and the hindbrain, it consists of the pons, medulla, and the cerebellum. This hindbrain, it also shows the two division, that is the metencephalon and the myelencephalon. The metencephalon, it consists of the pons and the cerebellum, whereas the myelencephalon, it constitutes the medulla oblongata. Then the brainstem, it consists of the three parts, that is above downwards, these are the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla. So these are the different parts of the brain. Let us see the details of each and every part of the brain. First of all, the cerebrum. The cerebrum, it consists of the two cerebral hemisphere. So these are the two cerebral hemisphere. They contains the gray and the white matter, and the sulci and the gyri. The cerebrum, it is the largest part of the brain. It consists of the two cerebral hemisphere, that is the right and the left cerebral hemisphere, which occupies the anterior and the middle cranial fossa, and the supratentorial region of the posterior cranial fossa. Each cerebral hemisphere, it consists of the surface layer of the gray matter called as the cerebral cortex and a central core of the white matter. In the basal part of latter, there are located the large masses of gray matter known as the basal ganglia or the basal nuclei. The two cerebral hemisphere, they are partly separated from each other by the deep median longitudinal fissure, and that is called as the median longitudinal fissure. A massive commissure, that is the corpus callosum, whose fibers interconnect the corresponding cortical areas of these two cerebral hemispheres, which lies in the floor of this fissure. The surface of the cerebral cortex is convoluted, and it has a series of elevations, and that is called as the gyri, which are separated by a deep grooves, and that is called as the sulci. So sulci and gyri, actually they increases the surface area of this cerebral hemispheres. So there are individual differences in the appearance of the sulci and the gyri, but some sulci are constant in their position and appearance and serve as an important landmark. Then coming to the next slide, that is the various lobes of the cerebral hemisphere. The cerebrum, it consists of the various lobes such as the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, the temporal lobe. Additionally, the two lobes that are there, that is the insula and the limbic lobe. The frontal lobe which is present, this frontal lobe, it is anterior to the central sulcus and present above the lateral sulcus. It is important for the voluntary motor functions, motivation, aggression, emotions, affects, drives and the awareness of the self. The parietal lobe, it is present posterior to the central sulcus and above the lateral sulcus. This parietal lobe, it is the major center for reception and evaluation of all the sensory information except smell, hearing and vision. Then the next lobe is the occipital lobe. This occipital lobe, it is lying behind this. It is lying behind the parieto-occipital sulcus and to the pre-occipital notch. It is responsible for reception and integration of the visual inputs and the evaluation of the what we can see. The temporal lobe, it receives and evaluates the input for smell and hearing and plays an important role in memory also. Coming to the next lobe, that is the insula. Deep within the lateral sulcus lies a submerged portion of the cerebral cortex called as the insula, which is often referred to as the fifth lobe or the central lobe of the cerebral hemisphere. The last, that is the limbic lobe. It is so-called limbic lobe. It is a composite bordering zone between the cerebrum and the diencephalon. It is somewhat ring shape. It is associated with the basic survival instinct, namely acquisition of food, water and reproduction. This cerebrum, it consists of the three surfaces, that is the superolateral surface, the medial surface and the inferior surface, and it consists of the three borders, that is the superomedial border which separates the superolateral surface from the medial surface, the inferolateral border that separates the superolateral surface from the inferior surface, and the inferomedial border that is separating the superolateral surface from the medial surface. Okay, this again divide into two parts. The anterior is called as the medial orbital border and posteriorly it is called as the medial occipital borders. Now let us see the details of the superolateral surface. So superolateral surface, it consists of the important sulci and the gyri. Let us highlight some of the important sulci and the gyri over here. So one of the important sulcus that is present is called as the central sulcus. The central sulcus, it begins at the superomedial border of the cerebral hemisphere, little behind the midpoint between the frontal and the occipital poles. It runs on the superolateral surface obliquely downwards and the forwards just above the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. So this is the central sulcus. Then again one of the important sulcus is the lateral sulcus. This lateral sulcus begins on the inferior surface of the cerebrum. On the inferior surface, it separates the orbital and the tentorial part of the inferior surface, and laterally this sulcus, it runs on the superolateral surface. Here on the superolateral surface, it divides into three portions, that is the anterior, ascending and posterior branches. The largest of these is the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus, which passes backwards and upwards. The part which is present anterior to the central sulcus, that is the frontal lobe of the cerebrum. Here just anterior to central sulcus runs a parallel sulcus that is called as the precentral sulcus. In between this precentral sulcus and the central sulcus, there lies a gyrus called as the precentral gyrus. The area anterior to the precentral sulcus, it is divided into three regions or three gyrus by means of the two sulcus, that is the superior frontal sulcus and the inferior frontal sulcus. So superior and the inferior frontal sulcus divides the frontal lobe into the superior, middle and the inferior frontal gyrus. Coming to the area that is present posterior to central sulcus is called as the parietal lobe just parallel to the central sulcus. On the posterior aspect there runs a sulcus called as the postcentral sulcus. The area between the central sulcus and the postcentral sulcus is called as the postcentral gyrus. Just posterior to the postcentral sulcus, the area it is divided by means of the intraparietal sulcus into two portions, that is the superior parietal lobule and the inferior parietal lobule. This area of the inferior parietal lobule, it is submerged by means of the terminal portion of the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus and also the terminal portion of the superior and the inferior temporal sulcus. The anterior part is called as the supramarginal gyrus and the middle part is called as the angular gyrus. Coming to the temporal region, the temporal region again it is divided by means of this superior and the inferior temporal sulcus into three gyrus, that is the superior, middle and the inferior temporal gyrus. This occipital lobe it is divided by means of this lateral occipital sulcus into the superior and the inferior occipital gyri, which are separated from the occipital lobe by means of the lunate sulcus. So this is all about the important sulci and the gyri over the superolateral surface. Let us see the details of this medial surface. The medial surface, it has the important sulci and the gyri. The central part of the medial surface, it consists of the white fiber, a band of the white fiber or the commissural fiber called as the corpus callosum. So this is the corpus callosum. This corpus callosum, it consists of the anterior end called as the genu, then the body and the splenium. This corpus callosum, below there is presence of this septum pellucidum is there. So this is the septum pellucidum. Just on posterior aspect of the splenium there runs a sulcus and that is called as the calcarine sulcus. This calcarine sulcus gives rise to the parieto-occipital sulcus. So this is the parieto-occipital sulcus. So along this corpus callosum there runs a parallel sulcus and that is called as the callosal sulcus. This is the callosal sulcus. In between this callosal sulcus and the corpus callosum there lies the cingulate gyrus. Okay, there is the cingulate gyrus that is present here. Then here on the medial aspect there is a terminal portion of central sulcus is there, and around that a U-shaped gyrus that is present and that is called as the paracentric lobule. That is called as the paracentral lobule. Then just on anterior aspect of this paracentral lobule there lies the medial frontal gyrus. So this portion it is called as the medial frontal gyrus. Then when we see the splenium, just above the splenium of the corpus callosum there is presence of the suprasplenial sulcus is there. In between the suprasplenial sulcus and the superomedial border there lies the part, a quadrangular portion that is called as the precuneus. In between the parieto-occipital sulcus and the calcarine sulcus there lies a triangular portion and that is called as the cuneus. So this is the portion called as the cuneus. Okay, the rest of the portion that belongs to the brainstem. So this is the pons, this is the midbrain, this is the pons, and this is the medulla, and this one is the cerebellum. Now coming to the details of the inferior surface. The inferior surface it is divided into two portions, that is the orbital part and the tentorial part. The orbital part it is having a sulcus that is called as the olfactory sulcus. This olfactory sulcus it lodges the olfactory bulb and the olfactory tract. The area that is present medial to this olfactory sulcus is called as the sulcus rectus. Okay, then the lateral portion which is present lateral to the olfactory sulcus, it is divided by means of a H-shaped sulcus into the four parts, that is the anterior, posterior, medial and the lateral one. The stem of the lateral sulcus, it lies deep between the temporal pole and the orbital surface. So this is the stem of the lateral sulcus. Then coming to the tentorial surface, this tentorial surface, it contains two long sulcuses which is running antero-posteriorly. These are the collateral sulcus. Medially this is the collateral sulcus, and laterally there is presence of the occipito-temporal sulcus is there. The area which is present medial to this collateral sulcus is called as the parahippocampal gyrus. This is the parahippocampal gyrus, whereas the area that is present lateral to the collateral sulcus is called as it is divided into two, medial and the lateral occipito-temporal gyri by means of this occipito-temporal sulcus. On the medial aspect, just on the medial to this collateral sulcus, anteriorly there presents a small area called as the uncus, which is limited by the rhinal sulcus. Okay, so this is all about the inferior surface. Coming to the next portion, that is the diencephalon. The diencephalon is the part of brain between the cerebrum and the brainstem. It is almost entirely hidden from the view by the cerebral hemisphere. The main components of the diencephalon, these are the thalamus, hypothalamus, metathalamus, epithalamus and the subthalamus. So here this is the thalamus, this is the hypothalamus. The thalamus, it is the large ovoid mass of the grey matter lying above the midbrain. The two thalami forms the largest mass of the diencephalon and are separated from each other by the cavity of the third ventricle and join with each other by the interthalamic adhesion. It forms a great relay station for all the impulses except the olfactory, visual and auditory. It appreciates crude sensations such as pain and touch. The thalamus also integrates the motor functions. Coming to the hypothalamus, this hypothalamus, it is the most inferior portion of the diencephalon. It contains the several small nuclei and the nerve tract. The most conspicuous nucleus, called as the mammillary bodies, appears as a rounded elevation on the base of the brain in the region of the interpeduncular fossa. The hypothalamus, it regulates the visceral activity through the autonomic nervous system and hormonal activity through the hypophysis cerebri. It is referred as the head ganglion of the central nervous system. Coming to the next portion, that is the metathalamus. Metathalamus consists of the two rounded medial and the lateral geniculate bodies which protrudes from the posterior inferior surface of the thalamus. The medial and the lateral geniculate bodies forms a relay station for the spatial sense of hearing and vision respectively. The epithalamus, it is a small area of the diencephalon posterior superior to the thalamus. It consists of the pineal gland and the habenular nuclei. And the details of the subthalamus. The subthalamus, it is a small area of the diencephalon that lies between the thalamus and the midbrain. It contains several nerve tract and the subthalamic nuclei which are associated with the basal ganglia and are involved in control of the motor functions. Coming to the next portion, that is the brainstem, which consists of the medulla oblongata, the pons and the midbrain. So this is the area of the midbrain. The midbrain is the smallest segment of the brainstem. It is just superior to the pons and it contains the nuclei of the third, that is the oculomotor, fourth, that is the trochlear, and the fifth cranial nerves. The midbrain, it is traversed by the cerebral aqueduct. The part dorsal to the aqueduct is called as the tectum and consists of the fourth surface elevation, that is called as the corpora quadragemina, which consists of the superior and the inferior colliculi, which receives the visual and the auditory impulses. The part ventral to the aqueduct, it is divided into right and the left half, the cerebral peduncles. Each cerebral peduncle, it consists of central part, the tegmentum, which is separated ventrally from the crus cerebri by a mass of pigmented grey matter called as the substantia nigra. One of the important content of the tegmentum is the two large cigar-shaped nuclei called as the red nuclei. In cross section, the red nuclei appears as an oval mass of pinkish grey matter. So this is all about the midbrain. Coming to the pons, it is the large middle part of the brainstem. It is continuous above with the midbrain and it is continuous below with the medulla oblongata. It is so named because it forms a broad bridge between the two cerebellar hemispheres by its transverse fibers, constituting the middle cerebellar peduncle. The vertical median sulcus on its ventral aspect lodges the basilar artery and it is called as therefore the basilar sulcus. Coming to the next portion, that is the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata, it is the lower part of the brainstem and is continuous inferiorly with the spinal cord at the foramen magnum and above it continuous with the pons. On the ventral aspect of medulla, there are two pyramid-shaped elevations that are present and these are called as the pyramids. So these are the pyramids. These elevations are produced by the descending fibers of the corticospinal tract involved in the conspicuous control of the skeletal muscle. Lateral to these pyramids, there are two oval elevations that are present and these are called as the olives. So these are the olives. Lateral to the olive, there is presence of the inferior cerebellar peduncles are present. So this is the figure showing the posterior view of the brainstem. Here this is the part of the midbrain is there that shows the presence of the superior and the inferior colliculi. And this is the part of the pons and the part of the medulla which are forming the roof of the fourth ventricles and the other details that constitutes the cerebellar peduncles and the tubercles of the, that is the gracile and the cuneate tubercles of the medulla oblongata present on the posterior aspect of the brainstem. So let us see the details of the cerebellum then. The cerebellum lies dorsal to the pons and the medulla and it consists of the two cerebellar hemispheres. The cerebellar hemispheres and a median portion, worm-like part, that is called as the vermis. It is connected to midbrain, pons and medulla by the superior, middle and the inferior cerebellar peduncles. The surface of the cerebellum has a narrow transverse ridge called as the folias, that is the leaf-like in sections, and the pattern it is called as the arbor-vitae pattern. Functionally, the cerebellum is mainly concerned with the involuntary control of the somatic motor activities essential for the maintenance of equilibrium, muscle tone and the posture. Coming to the spinal cord. So spinal cord, it is the long cylindrical lower part of central nervous system. It occupies the upper 2/3 of the vertebral canal and it is enclosed in the three meninges. It gives rise to the 31 pairs of the spinal nerve and retains the basic structural pattern. The spinal cord, it is about 18 inches or 45 centimeter long in an adult male and 42 centimeter long in the adult female. It is surrounded by the three meninges. It extends from the upper border of the atlas vertebra to the lower border of the first lumbar vertebra in an adult. In children, it extends up to the L3 vertebra. Superiorly, it is continuous with the medulla oblongata and inferiorly it terminates at the conus medullaris. As the spinal cord is much shorter than the length of the vertebral column, the spinal segments do not lie opposite the corresponding vertebra. The spinal cord extends in the lower part of first lumbar vertebra in a cone-shaped manner and the thing is called as the conus medullaris. Below the level of the conus medullaris, only the pia mater it continues as a thin fibrous cord, and that is called as the phylum terminale. This phylum terminale it extends up to the coccyx vertebra. Coming to the enlargement of this spinal cord, the spinal cord it shows two enlargement, that is the cervical enlargement that extends from C4 to T1 spinal segment, and that is for the supply of the upper limb muscles, and the second enlargement is at the level of the lumbar region. This lumbar enlargement it extends from L2 to S3 level, and that is for the supply of the lower limb muscles. Then the dorsal and the ventral nerve roots of the right and the left sides of the spinal cord below the L2 spinal nerves, they lies almost vertically along this phylum terminale, and this pattern it is called as the cauda equina due to its fancied appearance to the horse tail. That's why it is called as the cauda equina, and it is due to the almost vertical course of the lower spinal nerves. Let us see the details of the section of the spinal cord. Anteriorly, the spinal cord it shows a deep anterior median fissure lodging the anterior spinal artery. The posteriorly there is presence of a posterior median sulcus, from which there arises the posterior median septum, which enters into the posterior portion of the white matter of the spinal cord. Each half of the spinal cord it is divided into three portions, that is the anterior, lateral and the posterior region, by means of the two sulci, that is the anterolateral sulcus and the posterolateral sulcus. The ventral or the motor nerve root emerges from the anterolateral sulcus, whereas the dorsal or the sensory nerve root enters the spinal cord from the posterolateral sulcus. In the internal structure of the spinal cord, the white matter, that is the nerve fibers, lies outside, and the grey matter that lies inside. In the central grey matter, there is presence of the central canal, which contains the cerebrospinal fluid. The grey matter that is present, it is in the form of a H-shaped manner with a grey commissure joining the grey matter of the right and the left sides. The grey matter it comprises one posterior horn and one anterior horn on each side in the entire extent of the spinal cord. Only in T1 to L2 and S2 to S4 segment there is presence of a additional horn is there, and that is called as the lateral horn for the supply of the viscera. So this is all about the spinal cord and all the introduction to the central nervous system and the parts of the brain. Okay, so thank you so much.